Bucks County is like a throwback to the 1950s, where folks leave their doors unlocked and simple church-going values are preserved in time. But everything eventually comes to an end. A handsome new pastor joins the church, and a threatening stranger drops in. When a parish erupts in passions, the commandment that's forgotten is, "Thou shalt not kill." Bucks County, Pennsylvania. In 1743, colonists incorporate their settlements into Springfield Township, named for its abundance of hills, meadows, and springs. The growing agricultural economy produces schools, mills, churches, and general stores built to serve the population.
Springfield Township was a rural area of Bucks County a lot of historic inns, covered bridges.
A sense of history is ever present, as those who die in the Revolutionary War of 1777 lie deep beneath where the people of today walk. Springfield Township fails to expand like other nearby communities.
When Interstate 78 opened, there were a lot of people who thought that, people who would be commuting to New York City or Philadelphia or whatever, that it would lose a little bit of its rural charm. But it really didn't. Other neighboring municipalities started seeing more like residential subdivisions, things like that. But Springfield Township remained like a very quiet, kind of rural country community.
In a bucolic area of Bucks County, which is a throwback to the 1950s, because people leave their doors unlocked, they have their screen doors open.
The Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church congregation has been worshiping regularly in this building since 1763.
But Springfield Township remained like a very quiet, kind of rural country community. And the church was a big part, kind of a focal point of that community for the congregants.
It's about 12:30 p.m. on Wednesday, the 23rd of January, 2008, when the parish sexton, who is in charge of the maintenance of the church buildings and graveyard, heads for the church office.
The sexton of the church had arrived that day to clean the church, which is something that she normally does, and found that the door was unlocked. Normally, during that time, the door is always locked, but she found that it wasn't. Her first instinct was, whoever did this, I'm gonna give them a piece of my mind. They left the door unlocked.
But then she notices something strange on the floor.
It was a pool of blood on the floor. She couldn't tell right away who was injured because all she could see was her hair in this pool of blood, just kind of floating in different directions.
The sexton runs to call 911. The police and ambulance are summoned. Very little is known except that a woman is bleeding profusely from her head.
Someone was shot in the church.
When emergency responders arrived, they discovered that the woman shot was Rhonda Smith.
And she still has a pulse.
She found her alive. She was still alive when she was found.
So for something like this to happen, it's so out of the ordinary that it's horrifying to the residents of Springfield Township.
So they rushed her to the hospital.
She was transported to the hospital. She was still alive, barely.
The victim is identified as Rhonda Smith, who works in the Bucks County Lutheran Church office.
Nobody had any reason to believe that Rhonda Smith had any enemies.
For the last year, this 42-year-old is an active member of the Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church. She gets involved by singing in the choir and volunteering in the office. Rhonda has been dealing with mental health issues since her 20s. The churchgoers look after Rhonda and sometimes take up an informal collection to help out. Rhonda is open about her mental illness and has plans to write a book about her struggles.
People in the church community were embracing Rhonda. They were providing friendship, sometimes financial help, certainly spiritual assistance. Because Rhonda had her own issues, she was bipolar, they provided her with essentially a caring community.
Rhonda is not the only one who is fairly new to Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church. Handsome and athletic, Gregory Shreves is a successful athlete in the 1970s who comes to follow a new calling in the latter part of his life.
He had previously been a golf pro. Becoming a pastor was kind of a career change for him. He really wanted nothing more than to be a pastor of a quiet country church. And, you know, by all accounts, he just wanted to kind of live a fairly uneventful life as the pastor of this small church with a community that he could really embrace.
Greg Shreves gets through the seminary in about half the time it normally takes, and a Bible takes the place of golf clubs. Shreves takes his time to find the right place to settle, but when he finds Trinity Evangelical, the connection is clear. He becomes a minister and starts working at Trinity in April 2005, his first pastoral job in a charming historical setting, complete with his own private clergy house.
He lived in a house right next to the church.
Pastor Shreves thrives in his new calling. He loves dealing with people and the joys and the sorrows of their lives. Inevitably, women respond to the handsome bachelor pastor with innocent crushes. But there is no sign that Reverend Greg Shreves is anything but upright and honorable. For Rhonda Smith, the pastor is a lifeline. He is known for having a good way with people. And Rhonda, who is unattached and without children, finds support and solace within the congregation.
The pastor was happy to be able to help in some way by giving her some money in exchange for her doing some work.
Pastor Shreves approaches Rhonda Smith about a job. Rhonda's thrilled to work and appreciates the opportunity to learn. In church that Sunday, Rhonda surprises parishioners by publicly thanking them for their emotional and financial support in a moving address that leaves many parishioners with tears in their eyes. No one can imagine that Rhonda would be shot point blank in her beloved church. As the congregation prays for Rhonda Smith to survive, the police work fast to find the perpetrator. It's a time of crisis, and a strong presence at the helm is needed. The congregation and police all want to know the same thing. Who would want Rhonda dead? Springfield's Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church congregation worships regularly in this building and have since before there was a United States of America. Small-town values are at the town's core. No one expects a horrific assault in Springfield's historic church. Rhonda Smith is found bleeding from the head and barely alive in the church office. She is rushed to the hospital. Panic radiates out from Trinity Evangelical as police must ascertain whether the public are at risk. Authorities learn that the church's magnetic pastor, Shreves, is away on an official getaway.
At the time of the shooting, he was at a retreat for pastors.
An elementary school about half a mile down the road goes into lockdown. the kids are not allowed to go outside for recess. Anyone could be at risk from an attacker on the loose. Authorities examined the church office where Rhonda is discovered to see if there are any clues as to what might have motivated this brutal ambush. At the hospital, the shocking news of Rhonda's injury is revealed.
She had been shot twice in the head, so they rushed her to the hospital, but they found essentially that she was brain dead and with very little, if any, chance of recovery.
Rhonda's family is summoned to her bedside.
So her parents, Jim and Dorothy Smith, who came to the hospital, had to make the just incredibly difficult decision to take her off of life support.
Rhonda Smith dies. Pastor Shreves returns to his parish to find his formerly sedate flock in a state of fear and chaos.
He got the call that this had happened, and he came back.
Police immediately notice that he's a handsome man and clearly adored by the congregation.
No one had any idea who might have done this, who might have had a problem with Rhonda Smith. It's not as if she had any enemies that anyone knew of. The first reaction among the church community was, this must be an outsider.
The pastor and other members of the church tell police that a visitor attends church service at Trinity Evangelical.
Members of the church were recalling a stranger who had come to a church service a few weeks prior, who was disheveled, dirty.
He tells 3 different people that he has come from 3 different states.
They'd never seen him before. He was acting suspicious. He would make remarks like, oh, this would be a great church to rob. At one point, he actually tried to take a communion cup from the church and was kind of caught in the act, and they said, no, we don't do that kind of thing here.
It is a bizarre incident that is completely foreign to this peaceful church.
So some people were wondering, could it have been him, Some people were speculating that it was a robbery, that they thought that the church would be empty. They found Rhonda Smith there, shot her, and ran off.
And all the congregation fear, if the stranger kills once, will he come back for more? The pastor is forced to wonder, is he now at risk?
He was afraid. There was a murder at this church right next to his house. He had concerns that whoever did it might come back and hurt him or try to kill him. And he was also dealing with the feelings that the congregation were going through, trying to kind of guide them through it while also, dealing with his own feelings about what had happened. So nobody really knew what happened, but most people were not considering that this could have been a member of the church or someone from the community.
As the parish anxiously awaits the results of the autopsy, police hear a rumor whispered in the small community that Rhonda Smith has a married lover. Police speculate that she may have been in a relationship with the man who pushed to hide it, and when he could no longer, wanted to see Rhonda dead. Or the murder could be fueled by a jealous wife. But is this a lead or only small-town gossip? Police talk to Rhonda's parents and hear about her various romantic attachments and her bipolar disorder. An unlikely theory surfaces.
So in early stages of the investigation, the police did not rule out that it could have been a suicide.
Although there is no gun at the scene, they can't rule anything out.
And, there was some speculation that maybe she killed herself in the church with the assistance of someone and that person disposed of the gun. Or that someone found her and got rid of the gun because they didn't want it to be seen as a suicide because of the stigma associated with suicide.
Because Rhonda's parents are nearby the church when Rhonda is shot, the police theorize that they cover up their daughter's suicide.
And therefore they came upon the scene and they took the gun and disposed of the gun themselves.
But the police are divided.
The investigators actually had disagreements as to whether or not it was a suicide or a homicide.
Rhonda's father is adamant that they have no part in a cover-up, and that Rhonda did not commit suicide.
And he was very insistent to the police, she did not do this. Someone killed her. She did not do it.
But if it's not a suicide, who would have shot Rhonda Smith? Authorities bring their questions to Pastor Shreves, the man who appears to have had a close relationship with Rhonda Smith.
Came back to the pastor, part of their investigation, and we're asking him, is there anything unusual from your conversations with the congregation or anything from the past couple of weeks or months that comes to mind, anything that it might not have struck you at the time, but it could mean a lot for our investigation? And as soon as they asked that, they could tell there was something on the pastor's mind, but he was reluctant to kind of say. And finally he said, well, there is one member of the congregation who's been acting kind of unusual.
The pastor hesitantly admits that there are some odd elements at play in the congregation. What he's about to disclose will rip the roof off this picture-perfect county parsonage. Rhonda Smith, church administrator, is found bleeding in the church office. She's later pronounced brain dead and taken off life support by her parents. Rhonda has bipolar disorder, and although no weapon is found at the scene, authorities speculate as to whether this is a suicide that is covered up by her parents. As rumors of menacing strangers and affairs swirl, the Springfield community that once felt safe suspects that a killer is on the loose. And no one, not even the parish priest, knows what to believe anymore. The autopsy results come in, and what's revealed is almost inconceivable to the good people of this county parish.
She had been shot twice in the head.
The forensic examiner who conducted the autopsy, she found what's called stippling on Rhonda Smith's hand, the outside of the hand, which led her to believe that Rhonda Smith put her hand up in order to protect herself.
Stippling is the burn off of the powder that etches on skin or anything soft at close distances. The bullet is pushed through the firearm from the propellant being the gunpowder, and it's the burn off of the powder. And what happens is when it's at close distances, it doesn't have enough time to burn.
Rhonda Smith's death becomes a murder investigation.
If the victim killed herself, she would have put the gun closer to her face or to her head, and there would have been a substantial amount of stippling.
Residents of Springfield have their illusions of safety destroyed.
It's a very rural area, and it's an area that crime doesn't happen in.
The threatening stranger seems like the only possibility. He returns to rob the church, as he threatened, but finds Rhonda there by chance and shoots her. Authorities try to trace him. But the stranger seems to disappear as mysteriously as he arrives.
The police were conducting their investigation, starting first close to the victim, Rhonda, in terms of people who she knew, people who she may have dated at the time or in the past. And then they started branching out as all those potential people of interest had alibis and could not have possibly committed this.
Police return to the facts that the crime scene communicates.
Now, in this case, it showed us that this was not a robbery. Everything was in place. Nothing was stolen. But we were able to see that the first shot that grazed off of Rhonda Smith's forehead did not penetrate her body. It just grazed her forehead and instead lodged in the window frame behind the desk. The second shot was a contact wound to the side of her head. And those two pieces of evidence were able to lead us to conclude what kind of a revolver was involved in the shooting. But we didn't have the gun.
And the question of motive remains unanswered. Church members fear for their own safety. The investigation is stalling. Pastor Shreves is encouraged by police to talk.
They could tell that there was something on the pastor's mind that he was reluctant to discuss.
Pastor Shreves recounts a situation to the police that has nothing to do with Rhonda.
Finally, he did say, well, there's one member of the congregation who's been acting a little strange.
Police talked to the pastor and then started finding out about some of the uniqueness about Mary Jane Fonda.
The pastor tells investigators about Mary Jane Fonda's artistic talents and how he invites her to help decorate the church.
Mary Jane Fonda was a very talented artist. In fact, the church has a beautiful painting of the church by Mary Jane Fonda that used to hang in one of the rooms in the church.
But she says something to him that bewilders him.
Mary Jane Fonda said to Pastor Shreves, "You can't deny what's going on between us." And that was when Pastor Shreves realized, oh, Mary Jane Fonda has developed a romantic interest in me, and he just kind of stopped the conversation. He said, Mary Jane, this is not appropriate. I'm your pastor. I don't have feelings for you in that way.
But the situation doesn't end there.
She was leaving him long, rambling messages that were sometimes 10 minutes long, sometimes longer. She left messages that were so long that the tape on the answering machine would cut out, and then she would call back and start a new message and say, oh, I got cut off. But, you know, increasingly it was getting kind of out of hand.
The pastor asks Mary Jane Fonda to stop leaving him messages.
Mary Jane continued to leave these messages for him. She started buying groceries for him and leaving them in the refrigerator at the rectory for him. And when he said, Mary Jane, are you buying food for me? Like, you can't do that. You really need to stop.
She had strong feelings for the pastor at the time in terms of taking care of him.
The pastor takes steps to block her behavior.
He even started locking the rectory door so she couldn't do that anymore.
But Mary Jane won't give up.
And she would just leave the groceries on the front porch. And to make a point, he kind of just left them there one day and they spoiled.
But Mary Jane has also shown great support to Rhonda Smith's family.
She purchased an angel statue in memory of Rhonda Smith for the church, something for them to keep at the church in her memory. At one point, she baked a pie, which she gave to Dorothy and Jim Smith, to Rhonda's parents.
And when Mary Jane brings them the pie, Rhonda Smith's mother, Dorothy, is kind to Mary Jane.
Dorothy noticed that her shoes were ratty and said, oh, do you need new shoes? I have a pair of Rhonda's shoes that I could give you. And she gave Mary Jane some of Rhonda Smith's old shoes.
And as a result of those conversations, the police started honing in on Mary Jane Fonda.
They came to speak to her at the church, and like everyone else, they found that she just kind of talked incessantly and kind of rambled on, and they got the impression that Mary Jane felt she was kind of being given the short end of the stick, and that Rhonda Smith was getting more attention from the church.
Police also learn about Mary Jane Fonda's living situation.
She had lived there with her brother in a home not that far from the church. She was a hoarder, as was her brother. Their house had stacks and stacks of just stuff and junk.
Police ask Mary Jane for an alibi at the time of the murder.
She had said that she had gotten a hair appointment that morning. She told the police, yeah, I left my house at 5 minutes to 11. And they found that suspicious because 5 to 11 is exactly when they believe Rhonda Smith was killed, because that's when the internet activity in the office stopped.
Police follow up with the hair salon.
Normally when she gets a hair appointment, she removes the wig and lets them do her hair, then puts the wig back on and leaves.
And then, as it turns out, she left in such a rush that she forgot her wig.
The wig is tested for gunpowder residue.
However, it didn't meet all the criteria, so the expert could not come in and say that the wig had gunpowder residue. But we knew we were on the right track.
The police interview Mary Jane, and she talks for hours.
She is a tangential thinker, which means that when she's talking to you about something, she can go on and on tangentially about whatever the question was that she was originally asked.
During their questioning of Mary Jane Fonder, police asked her, "Do you own a gun?" And they already knew from her records that she did. And she said, "Yes, I own a .38 Rossi, a revolver."
I was having problems working for the car breaking down on the road, that type of thing. And anyway, working late at night, along 10 miles of back road to go home. He felt that anyone, and there were my physicians working late at night, I would have a gun. Anyhow, the idea of the gun, my father knew I had a gun. I told him the some of the ideas the guy suggested, well, go ahead, Tishy, go ahead. So I did it.
It's known as an inexpensive type of revolver. It performed well, but it was inexpensive, readily available, and there was a lot of them sold.
And the police knew that a .38 Rossi could potentially have been the gun that was used to kill Rhonda Smith, but until they had it, they couldn't say for sure. So they asked Mary Jane, "Do you still have that gun?" And she said, "No, I threw that gun away years ago. I threw it away back in 1994.
And the reason she throws it away is intriguing.
After her father's disappearance, she got rid of the gun because she thought it was not a good thing to have.
I took it, and I really don't recall why I threw it. Over Lake Nockamixon, over the bridge. Over the bridge was over 563.
Police conduct a search in the area Mary Jane indicates.
We had diving teams go out and scour Lake Nockamixon for the gun.
They did sort of some quick searches around that area, didn't find anything. So they believe that Mary Jane still had the gun.
But police lack sufficient evidence to get a search warrant or make an arrest. And that's when an amazing coincidence occurs.
Fortunately, on a Saturday afternoon, a father and son went fishing in Lake Nockamixon in Upper Bucks County.
An 8-year-old boy fishing with his father alongside Lake Nockamixon, and the boy saw a bird. He saw a great blue heron, and he wanted to get a little closer to take a look at it. So he was kind of walking along the side of the river when he saw something shining.
He took his sweatshirt, covered his hands, and picked up what turned out to be a gun. And he presented it to his father, and his father couldn't believe that his son had retrieved a gun.
They contact police, and the gun is sent to the State Police Crime Laboratory for analysis.
And before you know it, there's a hit on that gun as matching the bullets that were found on scene of the murder.
But Mary Jane's story doesn't add up. She states to police she threw the gun in the lake years before.
We were able to get an expert to analyze the gun to say that there was no way that that gun was in Lake Nockamixon for so many years because it was in pristine condition.
You'd have surface rust, depending on how long the gun has been in the water. You would have severe rust. You would start have pitting on the inside of the barrel, on the outside. Anything, aluminum frame would start to corrode. The steel parts would substantially start to rust.
A warrant is issued for Mary Jane Fonder, and the congregation of Trinity Evangelical Lutheran Church is stunned.
So Mary Jane Fonder was arrested on April 1st, 2008. Members of the church council the day of the arrest had told reporters, "Well, we shouldn't jump to any conclusions. For all we know, she could be innocent."
But with her arrest, an astonishing fact is unearthed. This isn't the first time Mary Jane Fonder is suspected of murder. An eccentric churchgoer, Mary Jane Fonder gets the attention of police after fellow church member Rhonda Smith is shot to death. When Fonder's gun is found by a child on a lakeshore and identified as the murder weapon, a warrant is put out for her arrest. In 1994, Mary Jane Fonder has a tough year. She threatens a coworker with a gun when she is fired. Then she purchases her own gun on the day of her unemployment compensation hearing. She is a caregiver to her father, Edward Fonder.
It was kind of difficult a little bit to take care of, and she was kind of trying to do her best, you know. One day there was a birthday party at the house, and some of her cousins, kind of distant family, came to visit, and they sort of started criticizing Mary Jane's care of Ed.
Shortly afterwards, her father disappears.
And Mary Jane claimed that he just walked out the door and kind of wandered off.
Edward Fonder III is not highly mobile, and he requires medication.
Police didn't think it was likely that he just kind of wandered away, but Mary Jane thought it was possible that he was either trying to run away or possibly just wandering off to die, as sort of almost a way of committing suicide.
Police searched the Fonder home.
At one point, the officer noticed in Mary Jane Fonder's bathroom a bucket with sort of like pink water that looked like it may have been blood.
When she opens the freezer, the Fonder house looks like a house of horrors.
The officer opened the freezer door in Mary Jane's kitchen and discovered a dead dog in the freezer. And Mary Jane claimed, oh, the dog was sick and died. And after that, she got a lawyer and stopped cooperating with the police.
8 months after he disappears, the elder Fonder's wallet is found in a mailbox in Allentown, Lee County, its contents intact. Ultimately, the investigation fizzles, and the father is never found. But the investigation into the murder of Rhonda Smith heats up. Mary Jane denies knowing anything.
Well, like I said, it was a freakish thing that happened, just freakish. Some freak accident. Somebody came by, and I truthfully, I didn't see how anyone in my church could do that. I couldn't do a thing like that.
Police ask Mary Jane to explain the fact that her gun is not in the water since 1994.
Someone must have found my gun in the lake and used it to kill Rhonda, and then put it back in the lake. And the police thought that was just ridiculous. There was one point where Mary Jane Fonder saw a bunch of cars outside of the church and had just kind of convinced herself that they were having a birthday party for Rhonda at the church.
In fact, there was no birthday party. There was nothing being done behind Mary Jane Fonder's back.
And I'll tell you, I didn't do anything to Rhonda. I may have been upset. I had all kinds of things I was upset about, but it had nothing to do with her. She made me nervous. I understand she had a nervous condition. She did make me nervous. I admitted that.
And when she becomes obsessed with the handsome Pastor Shreves, her eccentricity escalates.
You could catch glimpses that there was something dark going on with Mary Jane Fonder, where you'd do something that would upset her and an angry side to her would come out. And people consistently said it was like it was a different person that suddenly emerged.
And then, to top it all off, 2 days before the murder, the pastor had asked Rhonda Smith if she would be secretary for the church.
Mary Jane Fonder also did not know that Rhonda had been given a job in the office. One day she called the church, Rhonda Smith answered, and Mary Jane was so shocked that she hung up. And then she kind of called back and was like, Rhonda, you know? And again, she was just furious because like, well, why have they never given me this job? This is something that would have really meant a lot to me.
Mary Jane Fonder is pushed over the edge. The evidence is mounting.
After the arrest of Mary Jane Fonder, her brother contacted the state police and advised that he found shell casings in his car, and he turned them over to the state police.
The copper jacket is what retains the ballistic value. It actually takes the markings of the inside of the gun barrel onto the copper jacket so that we can determine what type of gun fired it, and it could be compared if the gun is ever recovered.
Police get a warrant for Mary Jane's brother Ed Fonder's car to test for gunshot residue.
Any crevices or wrinkles in the hands. In the pores, it could be, you can have contact with gunshot residue. That's what the kits, they use the swabbing kits to detect this type of, this residue.
They found the bullet fragment and it matched Mary Jane's gun.
The bullet fragments found in the car were linked to the murder weapon.
Ed Fonder meets with police. He takes obsessive notes, including notes about his car's mileage, and he provides them to police.
So these notebooks that her brother kept ultimately revealed to the police that the mileage she put on her brother's car when she borrowed it matched up with the distance that she would have traveled to dispose of the gun in Lake Nockamixon.
Still, Mary Jane is adamant that she didn't do it. Mary Jane Fonder's murder trial begins October 21st, 2008, in Bucks County. She wears the sneakers given to her by Rhonda Smith's mother.
Now, if that doesn't send chills down your spine, nothing will.
The gunpowder ended up on the door handle and wheel of the car, the vehicle, from her hands.
But the defense argues convincingly that the gunpowder residue found in the car is inadmissible, as it could have been transferred there by police.
It wasn't in a secure facility, it was in the open air parking lot.
But in a surprise move, Mary Jane Fonder's defense attorney points to her brother Ed Fonder as a more believable suspect. The bullet fragments are in his car. Defense says Rhonda Smith is helping Mary Jane Fonder find an apartment, and that could have upset Edward Fonder enough to want to stop Rhonda. What happens in the Fonder household between the two eccentric Fonder siblings?
My father is a redneck. He's my friend. He fights as a guy. He's always fighting and bickering with me, but I'm angry. I'm angry.
Mary Jane's brother Ed has kept out of the spotlight until now. Authorities allege Mary Jane Fonder transfers incriminating evidence into her brother Edward's car when she borrows it on March 28th. But is the killer her eccentric brother all along?
Ultimately, what the police believed from their interviews with Ed Fonder was that he was just kind of a person with strong sense of morals and religious beliefs, and that he just believed he was doing the right thing. He didn't really believe he was betraying his sister, but he believed, when you find something like this, you turn it over to the police, and that's what he did.
The evidence against Mary Jane is clear.
One piece of evidence that the police had was Mary Jane Fonder's pocket calendar. On the date of Rhonda Smith's death, it was written, "Rhonda murdered." But what was interesting about that was, at that point, they had not determined, and certainly hadn't publicly disclosed, that it was a murder. So they thought it was significant that murder was the word used in the pocket calendar.
In terms of the ultimate motive that led Mary Jane Fonder to commit this murder, it was an evolving process.
I was encouraged by the pastor. The pastor was very warm and a very friendly, kindly guy, and he took right to me. Pastor Shoes is a hell of a man, a real man, and I said, if I ever needed a man, he put me on my feet. He gave me courage. He was an affectionate, friendly man.
Mary Jane Fonder imagines she and the pastor have a romantic relationship. When Rhonda answers the church office phone, Mary Jane begins a plan of attack.
Yeah, the church, the ladies, it's wonderful, right? Happy, it's a happy thing. It's a nice people, good and well attention and all. But you know what's wrong with it? Some officers, the fact is I'm not working. That's what's wrong with my life. I'm not working.
She thought that she should have been asked to be the receptionist by the pastor, and why would he have Rhonda Smith do that unless perhaps this woman was having an affair with the pastor and she needed to protect the pastor from Rhonda Smith. And that's why she went in with a gun and shot Rhonda Smith 2 times.
On October 30th, 2008, a jury finds Mary Jane Fonder guilty of first-degree murder and possession of an instrument of crime, and on December 5th, 2008, is sentenced to serve life in prison. She doesn't admit her crime, but calls herself the second victim of the system. But in prison, Mary Jane fits in.
Mary Jane always loved to talk. Now she had a captive audience, literally, who could not help but listen to her. And they actually liked her stories because she kind of, made the time pass. So she found this strange kind of niche in the prison that she never had outside.
But there's still a mystery to be solved.
The case of Mary Jane Fonder's father and his disappearance remained open. It was still unsolved. The police believed that the body was probably buried somewhere at the Fonder property, but they couldn't get access to the house to search.
When the dog corpse is tested back in 1994, they find it has eaten diabetes medication. It is speculated that Mary Jane tests the medication on the dog and that the father meets the same fate as the family dog.
During that time in the prison, she told us she was having dreams, nightmares really, about Rhonda Smith and about the trial. She said she was having dreams where she was back at the trial, except that Rhonda Smith was there, kind of standing there just watching her, kind of dead-faced. That made her realize, well, what's wrong with me? Why had I not mourned Rhonda Smith? And she started thinking about it and then kind of came to the conclusion, maybe I did this. Maybe I committed this murder. She said to us, I think that I maybe did this.
But ultimately, Mary Jane Fonder believed in forgiveness.
I know there's a lot of people who go into the ministry, come out from jail, go into the ministry because they believe that the Lord will save them. And I believe that that person should be saved, and they will be saved with only flesh and blood right now.